right, how are you doing? A very good morning to you. Welcome to Daybreak still. You're still with us here. After that interesting conversation about the standards of building, we also have another standard we want to uphold, which is the standard of cybersecurity. Many of you have a lot of questions from hacking to data to cyber threats, etc. Of course, those are questions that you might have, and we're going to be asking if you have any questions as well today that maybe you want answered. They will be answered as well today, even as we expand on this topic of cybersecurity. Now, I know immediately people hear cybersecurity, what wanasema hacking. And if we are safe, I was just telling Safina hapa tutahack simu yake. I will not tell you what she told me. But it is all right. I want my guest to introduce himself. So go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Thank you, Willis. My name is Abdul Sheikh. I'm the CEO and founder of an IT solutions company called Convergence. So that's who I am.
All right.
And it is specifically in the area of cybersecurity.
All right.
Yes.
Now speaking about cybersecurity, of course, somebody would ask, what is it? What is cybersecurity, first of all?
Cybersecurity is not just hacking. I've heard you just say that.
Yeah, most people would think hacking. Am I safe?
Let me give the small basic definition of it.
Right.
Non-academic definition. Cybersecurity is the field that within ICT that focuses on protecting computer systems, networks, and data from cyber threats.
Okay.
As simple as that.
All right.
It's a vast field with specializations.
Okay.
But it goes down to protecting your data.
Right.
And of course, hacking is part of it, and to make sure that hackers don't get access to your data. But it's beyond just technology. There's social aspects to it as well.
Right, right. So why do people need, cybersecurity?
I want to talk about three things why you need it. Why, if you don't have those three things for your data, then there's a problem. One is confidentiality. Second is the integrity of your data. And of course, the third is the availability of your data. And cybersecurity and cyber risk management generally deal with these three. And a loss of one is what we call a breach.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So when you break down the three of them,
yes,
maybe you can break it down. So when you talk about like the confidentiality,
yes.
Right. So what is that?
Confidentiality is making sure that who has access to data is the right person, the authorized person, and the people that you want that data to be available to and visible to only.
Right.
Outside that, there's a breach of confidentiality, and therefore data in the wrong hands and eyes.
Right.
When it comes to data integrity, is to make sure that the data is what it's supposed to be, not manipulated, and therefore be able to serve the right purposes. And when it comes to availability, do you have your data at the right time, the right place, and when you want it? And more importantly, for availability, it goes beyond just the data, but in the systems that produce the data and store the data. And availability becomes where it all stops. When you don't have it, then you don't have, especially in the digital economy, you don't have business or systems.
All right. And so now, if you talk about cyber crimes.
Yes.
Of course, like you said, hacking seems to be the most common, but you've also talked about the integrity, availability, and we've had a lot of issues even in the past. When you talk about the availability of data, people looking for data protection in terms of asking companies, applications, what are you doing with our data, and all of that. Maybe you can tell us, first of all, what are the common cyber crimes?
The common cyber crimes, again, it goes beyond hacking.
Right.
And I will just use examples since we are talking to the common citizens here and break it down and use examples from social to technological.
Right.
we deal with the committee boys. That is called social engineering.
Right.
Where they use social tactics to get access to information that can be used in the wrong way.
Like calling and asking.
And calling, goes for your PIN, identity theft, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. But the aspect that is close to that might have a technological aspect. It's called phishing.
Fish, PH.
With a PH,
Yeah.
not Lake Victoria phishing.
Okay.
Just to be clear.
Right.
So phishing is when, an example, you have Jane doing an e-commerce purchase somewhere, and she puts her information, and then somebody sends her the following day a coupon or a promotion, but sends her a link that when she clicks, provides the exact look and feel of the website that she actually did purchase the day before.
Wow.
And then it's because she's been provided coupons and promotions, maybe 30% discount for the next purchase. It gets excited. But the catch is that this guy is doing phishing, is actually asking for credentials so that it can be used to send her the coupon.
Right.
So if you are not, you don't have your what we call cyber hygiene high, and your awareness is not high, you will go for it, and that is called phishing.
Right. So when maybe since we're already on it, we can delve with it a little bit further. So when you say ask for credentials, is it credit card details or even just name, email, password?
So it's the outcome of that will be something we call identity theft.
Right.
So anything that is important that can be used to impersonate Jane. That'll be, for example, credit card theft.
Right.
A username and password for the website. Anything that person, when they put their hands on, can actually go and impersonate and behave and do and use that data in a very harmful way. So that's called phishing.
So if, sorry to ask, it's interesting about phishing. So then if you say that if you click this link, it has the exact look and feel.
Yes.
So how do you, and I know we'll talk about it a bit later, but then how do you distinguish between the two? Because if I go, I don't want to mention the names because they might come from me, but let's say Willis.com,
yes.
Which Willis.com says it's an e-commerce site.
Yes.
And then somebody is mimicking Willis.com.
Yes.
How am I supposed to tell?
And given what we know about Kenyans, Willis.com will be up today.
I know, right? That's why I was like, I hesitated for a minute, but at least I know WillisRaburu.com.
Yeah, yes.
Right.
So I think this one is more of awareness.
Right.
If it's too good to be true, then probably is.
Probably is, right.
Nobody will give you credentials. Nobody will ask for your credentials if they're giving you a coupon. And nobody will send you a link to click on an email if you are already doing e-commerce shopping.
Right.
It's highly likely that you already have an account on that e-commerce site.
Right.
Where when you log in, the technology exists where your coupons are notified of you from within your account.
Right.
So there's no need of sending text messages or emails with links. So the first thing is awareness. It's more socially, more of a social requirement than a technological.
Right.
If you have your cyber hygiene is low, your probably bill will be affected.
Right, and that's what I was going to ask next. You mentioned cyber hygiene. If you have a high cyber hygiene, you'll be safe. If you have a low cyber hygiene, what is a high or a good cyber hygiene?
You know when the committee boys call.
Right.
And most Kenyans these days know that. That's a heightened cyber hygiene. You already know this profile type of callers, and you've built a profile of who they are, and therefore you have developed what you call antibodies, if I may use that.
Right.
So your hygiene, your immunity to that type of scam is a little bit higher.
Right.
Then as people get more online and you interactions online come, maybe e-commerce is being adopted more. Those who are fairly new to e-commerce become susceptible until they raise the immunity level to that. So that's what essentially cyber hygiene means. And the rule of thumb is what I said. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Right. Nobody will send you a coupon on a link, or even WhatsApp. I'm being told in some groups that when I look at what people exchange, you just shudder. I mean, it's Ramadan, and so I saw in the beginning of Ramadan where someone was sending around coupons for one of the supermarket chains, that you do this, go and get. So it's clearly, you know it, and people are just sending around. Guess what? They click on that link. It's putting something on your phone, your smartphone, and probably already have access to your data. Like
spyware.
Yes.
So for something like that, I guess they are hoping that out of these days, WhatsApp has expanded it, right? It's more than 256.
Yes.
Or out of 300 people, if they can get 3.
Yes.
Or 5, they're easy.
Or even 1.
Or even 1, right.
And if it's a high net one person,
right,
who might not be cyber proper aware, that person, I mean, the impact, it depends on the impact.
Right.
So it could be one person whose impact is much more higher than maybe even 2 people combined.
Right.
Yes.
So you talked about that's the social aspect of it. What about the technological?
So I spoke about the social aspect, which is the phishing,
right,
that has both technical and social aspect. The clear-cut social engineering aspect, where you get your citizen or Royal Media MD sending you an email saying, please provide this. And the email looks exactly like it, and tells you to provide your credentials for your email account.
And you'll probably
So that's also called social engineering. Boss amesema, because it comes in with the ethos, with the credibility of a CEO. And
would that, just sorry to ask, so would that be, when you say, would it be exactly, or because maybe the first few letters are the same, your mind tricks you into knowing, you don't check the last, maybe
yes,
it's
.net. Absolutely, it's behavioral. But if you looked a little bit more deeper, and if you actually clicked further deep into the source of the email, you'll be able to infer.
Right.
But a lot of us are not patient enough to see that, and we start providing the credentials.
Right.
And if it's the CFO's credential, then he'll do wire money out.
Yeah, it's gone. The company will lose money.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So talk about the technological.
Technological is, let me just give 2 examples because it's vast.
All right.
One is called. Let me start with the example. You are one of your favorite coffee shops, and you are using the free Wi-Fi, and you want to do some online banking. You go in, but before you know, some very smart kid is sitting not too far away from you on another desk, and he's sniffing your connectivity, and therefore he's between you and your bank server. And as you put your credentials, your account number, your password, and all that, he's sniffing that data. It's exactly what I just said. It's called man in the middle in the technology world. So it's part of also identity theft. He takes it. Now he's not used social skills. He used technological skills to get the same data. Now he has your data and goes online and impersonates you in your bank, and actually be able to get access to your money.
What? Because I've heard about that. When you're using public Wi-Fi.
Yes.
So what are the do's and don'ts, or should you just stop using public Wi-Fi and trust the bundles? Especially even at
bundles are a little safer, not safe, but a little safer.
Right.
They're public.
Right.
There are technologies that are available both to enterprises and users, and the technology is called VPN.
Yes.
So it's the best bet. And VPN, all it does is provides you an encrypted environment, an environment that is fairly safe. And therefore, the guy who is sitting next to you, even if he captures the data, that data becomes useless because it's encrypted. So he cannot decode and get your password in the plain English that you've typed in, or plain text that you've typed in.
Right.
So it gives you a little bit more, and of course, there are ways for sophisticated, skilled hackers even get to that, but it's much more safer, and it'll be a rule of thumb.
Right.
Yes.
So at least you have a VPN or a VPN.
Yes.
But again, if it's an app, how am I going to trust I just download the app? Because, you know, the other thing that we were talking about earlier on, even before the show, I was talking to my colleague, and we were talking about how we say yes to a lot of terms and conditions, and we don't know what, in terms of the data, we are saying yes to.
It's very important. I think it needs a little bit more awareness, and needs a little bit more alertness, and I use the word walk. Generally speaking, most of, let's say, Android or iOS, Apple Store or the Play Store, there's a certain level of due diligence.
Right.
So it's a little bit more comforting.
Okay.
Don't go into our website and just download the app.
Right.
Use the platforms are much more governed.
Okay.
Two, check and see how many people have downloaded this. VPN is an ancient, fairly relatively speaking, technology, and if it's a VPN provider, you can take a look at how many people have already trusted. If it's in the 10 million and above, and it's being provided by a credible organization, it's another level of check. Two is you decide what to say yes to or no,
right?
And provide the bare minimum, and that's the best way. If you have the opportunity and you're lucky enough to have worked in an organization that provides you VPN, it's the best way is to trust your own organization's VPN. Right. Yes.
Right. Now, when it comes to corporates and governments, we've had even cases with our own government where websites were hacked. We've had, I forget the name of the infamous hackers online. I forget the name, who claimed to be for a noble cause.
Yes.
So what are some of the cyber threats that keep organizations and governments awake at night? What are they looking for?
Absolutely. So the other cyber crimes that are common is called ransomware.
Ransomware.
And if I step back and give you an example.
Okay.
If you're a bank CEO and you wake up to be told your online bank is down, let's say you have 50 branches, all your customers are lining up because now Kenyans on Twitter have already indicated that your bank has a problem.
Right.
They line up and they go in there to the teller, and the teller say, I'm sorry, even me, I need to access to the core banking system. I also have a problem, I cannot. So you don't have a bank. That is what will provide, because now especially in the financial sector, it's fairly digitalized.
Right.
Which is a good thing. But the ransomware threat, and if I may expand, I spoke about encryption earlier.
Right.
And it's an important technology called cryptography that enhances confidentiality. And it's a good thing, but it can also be misused. Just like a gun can be misused, ethically used by the security agencies, unethically used by the criminals. Right. So if I may use that example. So what ransomware essentially does is takes your data, ransoms it, encrypts it, and just like it says, ransomware is a software used for ransom, encrypts it, and then tells you, hey, Willis, I have your data. If you want it, this is what you do. Right. And if I may give you a little bit of evolutionary history of this, and it started with, kiddies putting together a software code that goes into grandma and grandpa's machines, takes care of what we call very valuable, sentimentally valuable information of wedding pictures, grandkids' pictures, and all that, and says, hey, grandma, I have your data, and I have your photo of your grandkid and all that. For you to get it back, pay me $300.
Right.
And she panics, because that's very important. Pays it. And then there's the eureka moment that the hackers start getting. So, okay, if I can get $300 from grandma.
Grandma, yes.
I think I can get $300,000 from the bank.
Right.
Because they have money. And then that's how it evolved from individual attacks to corporate attacks. If I tell you, and the reason why it's becoming more exponential, and to give this in perspective, the statistics that I want you to think about is the last 25 years worth of data. 90% of it has been produced the last 2 years.
What?
90%
of the last 25 years?
Of the last 25 years of data has been produced the last 2 years, the exponential growth of data.
Wow.
So that is an important impetus that is leading to this menace.
And is this because people are digitizing more?
Yes, yes, because the world is becoming more connected. Right. The devices that you and I carry can carry more data, can produce more data, can process more data. The second aspect to that is the data sources are no longer limited. For Royal Media, just today, I'm almost certain that they just don't use their data center. They go beyond. They even do cloud, multiple cloud. So the traditional way of securing your data by building perimeter walls around it is no longer tenable, and I'll speak to that. The third part, and actually the main reason why you could see spike in ransomware is cryptocurrency. Now, the bad guys who took $300 probably through a bank that was easy to catch because it was easy to track the money movement through bank accounts, now has access to much more bigger data, better sources of data and variety of data, but he can hide his tracks. He will ask it in Bitcoins or any cryptocurrency, and then move around between cryptocurrency accounts, and it's hard to track. And if you could just probably take a look at the last 2 days worth of headlines, if you can Google it's actually on the CNN headlines and most of North American media, is what North Korea has just done. $100 million worth of a hack that is being taken, and that's what North Koreans do, is because of the political situation. They use money from outside to fund their services. So, but there was a sting going on, collaboration between South Koreans and the Americans and the Westerns to make sure that that money this time doesn't get out. And I didn't check what the outcome was, but as we speak, there's actually an operation ongoing to make sure that the money has already been taken out, but it actually doesn't go to actual accounts within North Korea. Right. And that's that geopolitical state actor conversation. So that is what is keeping organization. And the problem is it's become untenable. There are two examples of last year in the U.S., southwest U.S., the Colonial Pipeline. An entire quarter of the U.S. didn't have gas or mafuta or in the gas stations. Why? Because the main pipeline has been hacked. And the guys asked for $5 million. And they had to pay after a few days. Why? Because you're losing $5 million a day, then it was cheaper to pay the ransom.
Right.
Another one was Acer Computers, guys who provide Acer laptops. That was the highest ransom actually paid, $50 million. And they had to pay to get their operations back. And now it has become more untenable for a bank. It's an average of $18 million to deal with ransomware cost, either direct or the loss of services on outage. So what the banks do is, okay, I have backup. I can't continue to pay. So the bad guys, and this is a cat and mouse. Cybersecurity professionals and the cyber criminals are playing cat and mouse. So the guy says, okay, now we have a backup. Actually, we had to deal with a bank in Kenya with my organization. We had to deal with a bank in Kenya when we did incident response. We found out that the bad guys were in the bank for 6 months waiting to get the backup. It's because it's harder to get the backup than the production servers or the servers being used for business. Once they got hold of the backup, then it's easy now to come and take down the entire system. Right. If you're a bank, you're no longer in business.
Right.
So there's an industry response to that.
Right.
And I can touch on it.
Right. And just now, because, I mean, you were at the conference, was it at Kilifi?
Yes, Connected.
Kilifi, the one where, of course, the government is now very keen in digitizing. So it's been the talk ever since.
Yes.
So just by what you've been explaining, and Kenyans are going to be accessing these services, whether it's e-citizen, whether it's digitizing land, whether it's digitizing, getting, other controversial things like Huduma number, etc. All of that, basically they're trying to say that we are, and now even, NTSA and all this stuff, all these things are being digitized. So as Kenyans, they could be watching and saying, hiya, okay, how sure am I my data is safe, my information is safe?
Very important question. But before I address maybe the concern,
right,
allow me to talk about the digital transformation roadmap. I think it's imminent, it's inevitable. It is the only way to survive in the fourth industrial revolution, which is the information age. And in business leadership, and in marketing, there's something called SWOT analysis.
Right. Strength,
weakness, opportunity,
and threat.
And threat. And a good business leader will always have a knack for matching strength to opportunities. In Kenya, I think the strength is very clear. We are called Digital Savannah. We are probably the top in the continent and globally well recognized in our ability to digitize. Right. And it's because of the talent the Kenyans have. So it's already our strength. And since there's a fourth industrial revolution happening, where it's going to be an equalizer, global economy equalizer, we might as well digitize fully now.
Right.
And so we commend the administration and for continuing on that path. For God's sake, we invented M-Pesa.
Right.
We see what we're doing with the e-citizen. So it's important to take this road. And just like the cars had to come and we had to get off the donkey carts and the house carts, and we had to build highways and we had to take planes, it's inevitable that we have to embrace the digital age. But since we have an age, that leadership that is being provided right now to build a proper roadmap is a roadmap that is an initiative that we should support.
Right.
And we could see like the leadership is seeing the strength and mapping it into opportunities. But we also have exposures that come with that. And then we need to look at our weaknesses and then make sure that we check against the threats, if I may use that example. So there are concerns, but the good news is there are mitigations in place. Starting with awareness, proper awareness for building heightened cyber hygiene for Kenyans, but more importantly to put together controls and safeguards in the digital roadmap itself by putting security up front and not in hindsight, and not patching up and duct taping the digital. And I believe that is already in discussion. Right.
Yes. So apart from, and we'll talk about some of the policy and legal framework that is existing, but apart from that, somebody who's watching today and saying, okay, what steps do I take personally, as a Kenyan to make sure that my data is confidential, not available where I don't want it? Is it as simple as ask app not to track or choosing the right cookies? Like what are some of the things I can do personally today to make sure that, my data is safe?
First is the usual, I'll say, tendency where you say, I accept to save passwords.
Right.
Recommended that I think you should not be lazy. Don't save websites, passwords on websites. Two is don't accept any cookies. So when you see accept cookies, click on manage, where you can able to select and then say bare minimum.
Or reject all.
Or reject all.
Right.
If you don't need the site, or if it's suspicious or it's popping up with adware, stay away from it. Two is a smartphone is just like a computer. So if you have a smartphone, make sure you have antivirus on it. And if you are using public Wi-Fi, like I've said earlier, make sure that you use a secure Wi-Fi and not an open Wi-Fi. And if it's open, make sure that you're able to put some controls and like VPNs on it. Yes.
And so when you talk about a website that has adware, what's, to explain it, what is that?
Yes. So adware is what it says, add software that pops up and or tells you to click on this, or the common one is your hard drive is full.
Clean up.
Clean up.
Right.
So click to clean up. That never do that. That you've won XYZ reward.
Right.
Click to claim.
Yes.
Don't do that. Just if you're not sure what it is, then stay away from it. Yes.
All right. Okay. So we'll talk about some of the policy and legal frameworks that exist. That is helping in this case, with all this happening in Kenya. There's been a lot of talk about data protection. I remember there's a cybersecurity bill that was really fought because we do have countries that switch off social media. And we've had, of course, the big Cambridge Analytica where towards an election data is used. So what are some of the policy and, legal frameworks that have been put in place?
Absolutely. So like I've said before, it's cyber security professionals and government organizations and cyber criminals are always playing cat and mouse. So they have legal policy and strategic framework in place just to make sure they are catching up. I'll give you an example of the Computer Crimes, Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Act is one that has been put together. One that was put together belatedly was the Electronic Evidence Act, because if you catch a criminal and you had digital evidence, it was not admissible in the courts. Right. So it was harder fighting criminals. So that makes it a little easier to provide a prosecutorial, I'll say, strength to our criminal busting and investigative agencies. Another one that was put together to protect more on the citizenry is the Data Protection Act, for which there was a commission called the Data Protection Commission. So from a strategic perspective, there is the cybersecurity strategy that was put together by Ministry of ICT. So there are policies in place, but they need to be catching on. Yes.
So how do they catch on when you say they need to catch on?
Yes. So it should not be static. It should be dynamic. This the chase game between the good guys and the bad guys, just like crime has been in eternity, will always continue. So taking a framework that is dynamic in nature, that you always need to make sure that you are paying attention to what is happening in the space. And you update your frameworks, update your law, and more importantly, provide frameworks. And second part is don't reinvent the wheel. As Kenyans, yes, we have an age, but not necessarily the best. We have an age, relatively speaking, to the continent, but where did we get computers? Where did we get internet from? The West, the USA. So they've spent a lot of money. They have fully, almost fledged digitalized, but they're dealing with cyber threat. So now going beyond the acts and the policies is the dynamism, and then knowing when you have not been doing it right and shift the way you do security. Case example is what is happening in the US. The last 2 years, the Biden administration has put out memorandums and mandates out to the public. One of it, which is called Zero Trust Framework. It's as basic as saying trust no one, verify everyone, trust nothing, verify everything. And
This is online?
This is online. And in fact, it's a framework of relooking at the way security was being done, both in the public sector and in corporations. So there was a mandate provided to the federal agencies to adopt this new paradigm shift of doing security so that it's done better. Not digitalized and then secure, but making sure security is part of the DNA of digitalization in the first place. That's essentially what he's saying. Right. And it's a mandate that has been provided to the government agencies to implement within 24 months. It's a guideline to the private sector because it's a free economy. And we don't need to wait to arrive at that level to realize we are hyper exposed and therefore we need to do so. So what the government needs to do now is to follow, take cues, follow, and not reinvent the wheel, and maybe put together the same frameworks, if not better, and provide mandates and guidelines to make sure that the source of the data, ultimately, the source of our data, even an individual, comes from a corporation somewhere, from a data center somewhere. Right. So the mandate needs to go to the people managing the data center, that they need to do it this way. And provides better. And if you allow me to maybe juxtapose zero trust, the new paradigm, to the old, and I will give an example. Like I said, all these come from a source called the data center. But like I said before, the exponential growth of data, one of the contribution is the source of data has changed. There's no longer a perimeter. So if you had a house, a perimeter wall, and you had one gate, and you maybe had a security guard, that was going to work. That's what almost every data center is having today. There's cloud connection, there's what you call software as a service, that going to Teams, going to Zoom, all that are not coming from your data center. Guess what? That connection just opened up your device and maybe your entire network to the bad guys.
So this is like the Zooms, the Teams?
Absolutely.
So if you're on Zoom calls, which became so, of course, post-COVID, Zoom, Teams,
yes,
all of this, Google Meet.
Yes.
Right.
So if you're doing it from within your network, then all of a sudden, there's an exposure from your network to the cloud. So if you don't have proper security, what we call cloud security, and in other words, if you don't not paying attention to all your vulnerabilities, where in your house, the dresser that is probably broken, or now that you are able to have people come through the chimney, if I use that from the cloud, and the chimney bringing in dark cloud from the top, then you need to find out a way to deal with that. So that's what zero trust is doing, is, guys, we've had it wrong. Or we did not properly anticipate ransomware wreaking this type of havoc. And therefore, based on what ransomware or anything that can come, please don't trust anybody. Right. Don't trust Willis. Yes. Don't trust the CEO of Royal Media. And the reason, it's not always intentional. First of all, 60% of threat is internal. And out of that 60%, 80% is unintentional. So Willis is on his laptop within Royal Media studio, but the bad guy, I may just use Dmitry from Russia, is actually connected to his machine. All of a sudden, he's, what do we call, doing reconnaissance to see where he can get. But if you actually look at the service where this guy is connected, you see Willis is the one connecting. So yeah, IT professionals and cybersecurity professionals may not pay a lot of attention, say it's Willis. But what Zero Trust says, since it's mostly internal, and since it's possibly mostly unintentional, just don't trust. So separate the Willis, the individual, from Willis, the Willis identity online. Right. And say, don't trust the identity online. Forget about morality here, pure rationality, and therefore don't trust anybody. So there are three things that must be mapped together. Right. With the Zero Trust, it just says, I need a service or an application. Then I have an identity, which is digital identity. And then I have a device. I want to make sure that the device has the right access, the identity has the right access, but I want to make sure they are the right ones and they are secure first. That needs to connect to the application. When they're connected to the application, then, like say e-citizen is one of the applications, just for the common citizenry, then e-citizen needs to make sure that the right credentials are there. If it's an IT professional within e-citizen, then he needs to have what we call list privilege, that all I need is this. I don't need beyond that. So that is provide list privilege, trust no one, trust nothing,
right,
and have that as your framework.
Right.
And that's what is happening globally, and it's what we will encourage to be adopted in our digital journey as a nation.
All right, now even as we wrap up here, time is gone, but there are people who today want to, there's a lot of new things happening, like you said, if just in 25 years, data has come from the last 2 years alone, 90%, did you say?
Yes.
90% of the data. So therefore, there seems to be there's an information and knowledge gap, the way these things are changing, yet they're being taught in our schools, etc. So if there are people who are studying it and professionals in the field, what do they do, seeing as this sector really just morphs on a daily basis, almost?
Absolutely. So how do we not stifle innovation and digital economy adoption and still protect ourselves? The biggest gap is of course, talent. And it's not by accident that Kenya has outpaced the continent. And I can tell you for free, Kenya has talent. The last I checked, 70% of Kenyans are under the age of 35. The Gen X were born with Facebook and digital access. So that is an opportunity that needs to be harnessed. I have worked outside Kenya for probably a couple of decades. Convergence as a company, as a CEO, we were able to grow to a few African countries, the entire East Africa, all the way to Zambia. And we are able to see the Kenyan talent versus this. They're equally good, they're good, but I can tell you there's something special about Kenya. So the talent exists. The ability for a Kenyan kid to do wonders, given the opportunity and tools, exists. And given the right framework, and like I've said, that's why the IT industry in Kenya is very, very excited about the current administration's focus on digitalization. So what needs to be done is harness the young talent. And if, like I've said, the biggest threat right now is not just economic criminals, but state actors. If you remember, Costa Rica's entire country system almost went down a couple of years ago by a Russian gang. Like I've said, the Ukraine-Russian war will exacerbate these state actors. So as a nation, as we digitalize, then our entire economy will be in jeopardy if we not provide proper defensive posture. That comes with an internal talent. I am very confident, harnessed well, Kenya can produce enough talent for its own cyber forces to protect the nation, provide enough resources for the private sector, and even go beyond and actually export that. And the good thing with exportation of IT skills is it's not physical exportation. It is ability to do remote work from where you are. So, and of course that's the new digital economy. So that harnessing of talent is actually an important focus that unfortunately from today as is, the government may not be able to help. In fact, to an extent, especially in the education system, it can be detrimental. A typical computer science textbook today needs to be glassed up and put in a museum. and because it's too academic, it's too yesterday, it's irrelevant to today's market. So what needs to be done is revamp that and getting the government with its new focus on digitalization to also get involved in how IT. I know there's a focus on TVET. You might be surprised at the number of engineers we have hired, how the kids who are C's and done diploma are doing better. So there's a difference between academic and skills. The focus on technology should be applied skills. And and it's actually a very good level ground, where a kid who had an A and the key word is see. As long as you have, talent, tools, that's all you need. Right. And that needs to be harnessed, and then the government funnels that into our investigative and defensive agencies to make sure they have the right skill set. And I'm telling you, we should be able to export talent and of course, in the process, and Forex for that.
All right. Well, like I say, I'm sure, this conversation is something we'll definitely have again, because just like you said, the way the system continues to change, so many things that you brought up that are worth another discussion, a further discussion, or even just the last point you mentioned about applied skills and what's being taught in the schools, the opportunities there, what the agencies are doing, so much more we can unpack. But for now, I'd like to say thank you so much for coming through. Now I have realized that it was much more than, it is definitely much more, and I'm sure that you have also realized it is definitely much more than just hacking. So it is something for organizations to think about. It is something for governments definitely to think about, because we are definitely looking at it from a 360 kind of, holistic kind of appeal. But thank you so much for coming through. Sheikh, we thank you for that. Of course, what are your social media handles if people want to reach out to you?
At Convergence NS. That is the main hashtag Convergence NS. I will share with you after this our LinkedIn pages as well.
All right.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much. He is the CEO of Convergence, of course, definitely on top of his game when it comes to cyber security. We hope you learned a thing or two. Remember, especially if you're on a public Wi-Fi, VPN. If you're an organization, make sure you're securing. Trust nobody. Always trust but verify. Like I say, zero trust. And hope everything, yes.
Yes, just to add one. I didn't touch on what happens if the backups fail.
Right.
There is an industry solution. It's called air gap. And if you're a bank today, if your backup is down, you're down. So there's something called Sheltered Harbor. The good news is the industry solution done by American Bank Association and something called Financial Services Industry sharing consortium that is in about 70 countries. They are dealing with this ransomware today. So don't reinvent the wheel. Find out what they are doing. Adopt that. And it's called cyber resiliency. So cybersecurity is more controls. Zero Trust puts together the controls and the resiliency. So as you put together controls, don't forget the resiliency.
All right. Thank you very much. And that, I would like to say thank you so much. We appreciate all the feedback. Thank you so much for the knowledge. We shall see you again right here tomorrow on Daybreak. Be safe out there.